Hello, everybody. I'm Tyler Crowley, and this is the STHLM TECH Meetup. Thank you for joining us. And if you are there, do me a favor and give a little shout on the YouTube chat, which we'll get into in a minute, so I can see some people are watching and that it's streaming and everything's working. Hope everybody is doing well. So if you're joining us for the first time especially, this is not how we normally do it. Normally we meet in Stockholm, typically at the Hilton Hotel in Slussen, and it's a live event with a big live audience. And due to COVID, we are doing the live streaming version of this. I hope this is the last one that we do this way, but we just don't know yet. I know Sweden's going to make a decision tomorrow about letting in more people, but I really do miss doing the big live version of the event with the big auditorium and everything. But this will make do for the time being. We do have a fantastic guest this month, and that's one of the benefits of doing it virtually, is we can get guests from everywhere, and we can have pitches from everywhere, and that's what we have this month. We have the guest, one of my favorite guests, Mark Suster from Los Angeles, who would be very difficult to get in Stockholm, but due to the powers of technology, we can get him virtually. And then the three pitches this month, we have Sweden startups as usual, but we also have one from Israel and one from Hong Kong, which I'm really looking forward to. So hello, Martin. Glad that you're here. Let me see if I can put that on the broadcast there. There you go. Thanks, Martin. And if you're in the chat room, hey, Johan, good to see you. Great to see you. And yes, missing the live events. Yeah, I miss seeing you at the Hilton as well. So as we always do, we'll jump right into it with the news. I'm going to jump into my deck here. So this is kind of what you get if you were to come see us in Stockholm. This is how you would see it. First thing I always say is thank you to the sponsors. We have one of the best collection of partners of any event anywhere in the world. I couldn't be happier, totally blessed to have these fantastic companies like EY, who everyone knows as one of the big accounting firms, but they also help startups find funding and meet partners and do business management consulting and all the important stuff that a lot of startups don't know that they do. Visa as well, everyone knows is a credit card company, but they love startups and they have hundreds of APIs, literally hundreds of APIs that fintechs can tap into, and they're incredibly startup friendly. And if you are a startup and you want to connect with Visa, let me know. I will connect you with Simon, and he has done wonders for many of the startups who attend the event already, and I'm sure he will be doing many more. Esri is the leader in geodata. They created the category. Capole is a fantastic agency, especially if you want to connect with big enterprise companies, and they can help you with the B2B side of things. EQT Ventures is one of the newest but biggest and best venture capital firms in Scandinavia, based out of Stockholm. NASDAQ, everybody knows, that's where everyone ends up. And the Swedish Energy Agency supports a lot of the fast-growing startups who are trying to solve the biggest problems with climate change and everything like that. Vigna is the biggest and best law firm, but they also are the best for startups. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they are approachable and affordable even for startups. And Nordea is the big bank in the Nordics, but they also love startups. And it's a pleasure, like I said, and it's a privilege to work with such fantastic partners. And by the way, all of the partners that we have are companies who said they want to support the event and helped make it possible, make it what it is. We have, for every partner we have another 4 who we just don't need duplicates of multiple banks and multiple lawyers and all of that. So, I took time to figure out who were the best partners to have, and that's what we have. So, here's Michael McDonald. Good to see you. Yeah, I hope to get to Stockholm soon. So let's get into the deck here. There's actually quite a bit of news and some really good news. And one of the things you know already, we are live streaming this. Obviously, you see the people chiming in real time. We're at live.stockholm.tech. STHLM is how Stockholmers abbreviate Stockholm. And you can, as these people are doing, like Michael here, it says, hello there. If you go to the YouTube and you go to the live chat, and you just type in a message and I can push it up onto the screen like I've been doing here. And thanks to everyone who's been doing that. And Christian is saying he misses the Hilton format. I do as well, Christian. So we'll try and keep it as much as we can like the Hilton format. Einride, who pitched many months ago, before they ever raised money, is in the news. They've just raised 10 million US for their autonomous trucking growth during the pandemic, which I imagine is one of those areas that is growing nicely as a result of the pandemic. You don't need a driver. These vehicles totally drive themselves, and they're really pioneering in that space, and it's fantastic to see. Funny enough, I wish we had the video of that pitch. They were one of the 3 startup pitches that night, and it's one of the worst pitches we ever had in the history of the event. It was quite comical, and but it turned out to be a fantastic company, and I couldn't be happier for them. But it just goes to show you it's not always about a great pitch. Candela raises 80 million for their electric boats and want to be the largest in that category. And they do something quite innovative, which is the hydrofoil boats, which is truly wild to witness in person. I was lucky enough to see one of these in Stockholm over the winter. Great group, a team that they have, and congrats to them for raising, that's 80 million Swedish crowns. So it's also about 10 million US, just like the last one. And this one's 12 million, Swedish esports startup Challenger Mode. Awesome startup as well, great group of guys. From Alibaba Group, which is quite the investor to have these days. They're also a big investor in Spotify, as you might know. Congrats to them. And then, as seems like I've been showing this slide every month, Swedish battery maker Northvolt raising 600 million from Volkswagen, Daniel Ek, Goldman Sachs, and others. And this is not a reprint of last month. They are raising hundreds of millions every month, and it's now, they've now are expanding incredibly fast. And it's because of the demand they're essentially making batteries for the European car companies, which is why Volkswagen, as it says here, is an investor. And there's such huge demand for all of these European and German car companies to switch to electric vehicles. And Northvolt is in the position now to be the supplier for those. So it's truly fantastic. And congrats to them. And this month, there's even a bigger fundraising announcement, which is Klarna, from Stockholm, one of the fintechs, become Europe's biggest fintech unicorn with a 10 billion valuation after their mega round of 650 million, which is truly fantastic, and congrats to them. And I have to say, Klarna was the first partner of the Stockholm Tech Meetup when we started these in early 2013. So I have to say a special personal thank you to everyone at Klarna for making this event possible, just like all the partners that we have now. And their deal was they wanted to support the event until it was clear that it was going to continue, and it certainly did, and they did as well, although they grew a little bit faster than the event did. Here's some metrics about that. So when we started at the very end of 2012, early 2013. This chart, by the way, was just made hours ago with my friend Joseph Michael, who was at Invest Stockholm, but Stockholm Business Region, recently when it moved over to Stripe. But he was in charge of the startup growth in Stockholm specifically. But this chart that we just made together a few hours ago is the total startup investment in Sweden year by year. Nobody's really seen this yet. Like I said, we just put this together a few hours ago. So in 2012, we had about, I think it was 0.3 billion or 300 million US. These are all in US. 300 million. 2013 went to like 400 million. 2014 went to 500. And then in 2015, we started getting close to a billion. 2016, we did finally hit a billion in 1 year, which was a fantastic goal, and we hit that. We've broken it every year since 2017 and 18, as you can see. 2019 just crushed it, went right past 2 million, right past 3 billion. And this year, 2020, this is totally up to date, includes the slides that you just saw with Northvolt and with Klarna. And we are now on track to potentially meet the record-breaking year of last year, 2019, which is impressive because with COVID, the data around Europe is that it's 20% less, is sort of the decline that we're seeing across Europe in terms of investment activity. We still have 3 months left or 1 quarter left, and it's historically the strongest quarter of the year is the fourth quarter. So it will be really interesting to see if we do pass, the 3.2 billion that we had for last year. But phenomenal to see. It's one of the strongest growths. I think it is the strongest growth in Europe. So not only have the startups been growing, but it looks like they will continue to grow because there is a new billion-dollar investor on the scene. Daniel Ek made an announcement in a kind of podcast this week that he's pledging $1 billion of his own personal money into investing, and that is truly fantastic for the companies, for everybody to have it's essentially like having a new $1 billion fund in our ecosystem. And it seems like we get a new one every year, and it seems like we can't get another, but sure enough, here's one for 2020. So congrats to everybody involved in this. This is a win-win for everybody, and a huge kudos to Daniel for doing this and making this announcement. It's truly fantastic. And that's all the great news for this month. There is, we'll turn to a slightly more negative angle here. And as many of you know, I'm American, and as most of you, the world knows, America is just 3 weeks away from a presidential election and a whole new election for Congress and everything, which will completely change the landscape of America, hopefully for the better. Time will tell. But in America right now, nearly everybody is debating everywhere, day and night, about politics and about issues and about social issues and racism and tech, and if tech as a force for good or evil, and the media as a force for good and evil, and this tension between Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. is palpable in the air. So here's a point. Just a few hours ago, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, did some social media updates, as he's been known to do. And for the first time ever, Facebook and Twitter hid them, essentially deleted them, which is quite a strong, unprecedented maneuver, no pun intended. And it's people have been asking for this for a long time, including employees at both of those companies. And it's finally happened. It'll be curious to see if they continue to do that, and if they'll, what this all means going forward. That's kind of what this whole conversation's about. So Wired did some investigating to find out where is Silicon Valley's voting, record looked to be like, and they kind of looked at that, followed the money. And they say here in this headline, Silicon Valley opens its wallet for Joe Biden, with 95% of employees at the 6 big tech firms have gone to Trump's Democratic challenger. And what's interesting about that is also today, Washington, D.C. is now calling back the 6 big tech firms for monopolistic positions, and that means they're going to be enforcing lots of regulations to break up these monopolies. And this is what I'm talking about, this big challenge. But maybe that explains why Silicon Valley is so eager to support Joe Biden, because then they won't have to face these charges of being a monopoly and whatnot. But again, the point of the struggle between Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. is quite real. And it's not limited to just the big 6. At Coinbase, which is one of the fast-growing, up-and-coming startups in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, was in the news because the founder made a manifesto of sorts to his team that over this turmoil over Black Lives Matter and political speech at Coinbase, the CEO declared that political discussions are out of bounds and then gave employees a week to agree or take a severance package. And that's been the big debate at the moment because for example, media companies, as you probably know, the American media companies have become very clearly either left-leaning or right-leaning, and there's very little left in the middle. Essentially, they had to pick sides. And now we're starting to see this amongst the startups and the tech companies. And with the banning of Trump's tweets and Facebook posts, that does kind of indicate that those companies are leaning more towards, the left. And sure enough, there is a Twitter for conservatives called Parler. And this is sort of the inevitable consequences of picking a side, which is then you open the door for a competitor on the other side. So if you pick the right, then your competitor will pick the left, and so on, just like the media. So Coinbase doesn't want to deal with that. They are a fintech, and they want to cater to everybody, as I think most fintechs do. They're a cryptocurrency exchange essentially, and they want to be, they don't want to take a position, and as such, they feel like the strongest thing they can do to make a difference for social benefit is to complete their mission to exist and to enable crypto trading for everybody. And many of the staff, naturally being Americans, 3 weeks from the election, want to debate, and if left to their own devices, would probably debate all day. And so that might be why he is trying to rein it in a little bit. Hello, Amir. And here's another headline from Fortune, where Coinbase wants to reject politics. It should already know how risky that is. Yes, anything to do with politics is a very risky maneuver in America at the moment. Even Spotify got into that this week with what was largely embraced as a brilliant move to have Joe Rogan as bring his podcasting to Spotify. Even that has become a kind of contentious issue. Everything becomes political, sadly, in America at the moment. And it's really challenging for all of the startup founders today, which is quite sad. And it doesn't help that the media benefits from all of this tension and division, and they sort of exacerbate it. And I don't think they help it much. If anything, they kind of inflame it. And that's also been another part of the kind of tension triangle going on in the Valley at the moment, which is the startups are feeling that the tech media is just trying to inflame things. And so, as you see on the next slide, just yesterday, Tesla dissolves their PR department. And there was a bunch of chatter amongst journalists, amongst each other, asking, has anyone heard from Tesla lately? Because they're not responding to any emails for months now from journalists who cover, the auto industry. And Tesla's decided, we don't need the journalists anymore. We're going to do everything internal. And that led to this tweet today. A few hours ago, Balaji made what I thought was a rather cogent point, which editor-in-chief will become a new C-level position at tech companies in the next few years, on par with CTO. It's a descriptive title that signifies that tech is building its own its own stack, essentially, where they're going to internalize everything, and the message that they have, they're going to get it out directly through the platforms like Twitter and Facebook and whatnot, and YouTube, and make their own content and speak their own language and get it out and kind of circumvent the sort of toxic or unfair press that they feel that they're getting. And that is, the changing, the way the game is changing in 2020, and it's crazy to see, but that's sort of the world we're in. On a different note, one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time is this. This came out today from NVIDIA, who has found a way to make the live streaming, like video chatting, you know, if you're doing Zoom calls all day, to work on much less bandwidth and with some very cool new additions that you probably haven't seen before. So as you see here in the video, when the call starts, the person's face is captured, and then the key points of the face are recorded, and then with all that's being captured is the key points of the face, and the face is remapped onto your own face, so that you're able to have incredibly low bandwidth calls. And you can see here the calls on the right with the NVIDIA go through fine, where traditional ones with low bandwidth look really terrible. But it goes much deeper than that, because it is your own face mapped onto your own face. It can work with masks, like in this example, but even cooler in the next example. You'll see a person who's not looking directly at the camera, which I'm guilty of, and I think many other people are as well when they're on a video call, like this gentleman. But because they're able to capture the key points of the face and map it, they can essentially turn the face, as you see here, algorithmically, so it looks like the person's talking directly to the camera, even though they're not. And you could even take that idea far further and make a character out of somebody's face into anything that you can imagine, much like the Facebook masks that you see in real time and everything. And the implications for that are quite interesting as we get into VR and AR and everything like that. But for bandwidth reasons alone, it could be very cool. To take it one step further, a young startup is using similar technologies, and they essentially allow you to, with a text description alone, describe what the words that you want said. And there's even a complementary kind of a technology where you can describe the person, the character. And what you're about to see in this weather report is,
welcome to your daily weather
this
update.
person
Let's take a look at what's been happening.
doesn't
In
actually
London,
exist.
residents are experiencing cloudy conditions. Temperatures are expected to be, on average, 20 degrees Celsius with light winds.
There's no camera.
If you're out today, remember to check back for changes. We'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, so in this example, there's no camera and no microphone. That's not even a real person. That person was just a text description. It made a avatar that then read the script, which the user gave the input of the script. And now you could do a weather report with just a simple little text, no studio needed at all. Maybe future versions of this event will be done in a similar way, simply via text input. Who knows? But really wild to think that the quality is getting high enough. So again, thank you to all of our partners. And my friend Mark Suster should be joining us shortly. And yes, as Joseph says, NVIDIA is killing it. And yeah, some wows there. And Angelica made some points about Black Lives Matter, which I know that's becoming an international issue, even though it was sort of born out of the US. So it's interesting to see how that develops. And let's see here. So about Mark, Mark should be joining us in the next 6 minutes here. So while he's coming here, let me just go and I'll say a few words about Mark. I first met Mark in 2007 in Los Angeles, where we're both from. I was with a startup called Mahalo. He had been an entrepreneur, sold 2 companies, one of them to Salesforce, and then became a VC. And so he started a blog called Both Sides of the Table, which I highly recommend. It's one of the best blogs on the internet in this space, where he gives very candid advice, because he really does sit on both sides of the table as both an entrepreneur and as an investor. He's still very much an entrepreneur at heart. We also coincidentally went to the same university in San Diego, and share a passion for the same Mexican food in San Diego, no less. But when living in Los Angeles, 2007, Los Angeles was not taken seriously as a tech ecosystem in 2007. And Mark has really led the charge in even back then in getting LA to be respected as a tech city, which today is one of the hottest tech cities on the planet. And in fact, a lot of startups and investors are moving from Silicon Valley to Los Angeles. And we owe Mark a huge, we're totally indebted to Mark for that. And besides that, when I was doing my own startup in 2011, Mark was the first person I went to get his he has a reputation for giving incredibly straightforward advice. Like he doesn't bullshit at all. He will tell you exactly what you need to hear in a very tough love kind of way that most people can't really take. But I knew that's what I wanted. And I was explaining my startup and everything else. And he said, don't do it. And I said, why? And it was a solution for retailers, for small mom and pop yogurt shops and shoe stores and whatnot, restaurants and things like that. And he said, essentially, you don't want to be you have to be careful who you're making a solution for. And you don't want, if you make a solution for that demographic of, small restaurant owners, his point was that small restaurant owners generally don't know tech at all and don't use tech at all and don't know where the reply all key is on an email, and that it would drive me insane trying to make software and a solution for this demographic and for this market. And I didn't, at that time, I fought him on that feedback. It took me 5 years to come to terms with the fact that he was 100% correct in that. And I really wish I had taken his advice to heart rather than challenge him and fight him and go through the 5 years of building that company and everything. So, Joseph Michael says, what does Mark think of the European tech ecosystem? That's a question we will ask as soon as he joins us here. But I'll tell you a funny story as we're waiting for him to join in the next minute here. When I had the idea for my startup that was a solution for small restaurants, I ran around to all the restaurants in my neighborhood to ask if they wanted this. And I pretended that I had already built it. And I kind of printed out little Photoshop mock-ups to show the managers and ask if they wanted to have the solution. And I met with 10 of them in one evening, and all 10 of them said they want it, and they gave me their business cards. And so I thought I need to run home and start coding this thing and get some investors to support it and do the whole dance, right? So then I met with Mark the next day for lunch, and I told him that I met with 10 owners or managers, and 10 out of 10 said they want it. And he said, yeah, they're all going to tell you they want it. But will they actually sign a contract? It's a different story. I said, okay, well, let you pick one. And that ding is probably Mark Suster. So let me let him in here. Let's see here. Yes, it is.
No other VCs were doing content on Snapchat, so I kind of had the audience all to myself. I had about 65,000 people who were regularly listening. And it's interesting because when you blog, people know your words, but they don't know you, right? And because people were seeing me like this every day, I found that whenever I went out anywhere, people would pull me aside and say, you're that guy I follow on Snapchat. And it got to the point where it was driving my kids nuts. I would take them to like a soccer match or a basketball game, and everywhere I went literally got pulled aside. So that was a bit of fun. I probably should do it again. I really enjoy it. But it just, I don't know. I do it with everything. I kind of do it for a while and I drop the mic. I mean, you'll remember, Tyler, I did This Week in VC for also probably a year and a half, 2 years. But then when I didn't have a producer, someone doing all the work for me, and I just had to turn up, like it was too much work.
So we fixed the audio. And it
was it not on my side?
It was not on your end. It was on my end.
So should I go back to this so I don't look so funny?
I think you look.
No. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So
I'll stick with it.
But to recap the point, you were able to make an incredibly confident prediction that LA was to be the next was going to become a epicenter of innovation because of the talent, that most of the ingredients were there, except for the capital and the mentorship. And then you, in essence, brought both of those, but you were eager in also inviting others to bring as well.
But listen, right now it's accelerating. I had this question come up about a week ago. They said, are you worried about Los Angeles? Are you worried about the future of innovation? You have to realize LA, it's the second largest city in America. So greater LA has about 19 million people, 19. It's a very large place. We are the most large, diverse city in the country, except for New York City. But the interesting thing about LA is it's not urban. It's exurban. Which is a term. It's not quite suburban, but exurban. But we consist of, I don't know, 15 or 18 micro communities. And so what that means is you don't have the same problems where you have in urban environments like San Francisco, like New York. And there isn't a flight from LA. There's a flight to LA even during pandemic. You have the opportunity in LA. You can have anything you want. You can have the urban experience if you want to live downtown or K-Town, which is Koreatown. I live right against the mountains. So I actually can hike for 9 miles straight from my house into greenery. You wouldn't even think you were in LA. Yeah. So like you can really make LA anything you want. And I think it's attracting a lot of people right now.
Where would you go if you weren't in LA?
I'll tell you some places in the world that I love. How about I'll start there?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first of all, I should tell you San Diego is my happy place, especially North County, San Diego. Yeah. So like, you know, I was even talking to my wife about whether or not we could just spend 6 months a year there. Now that we've realized during pandemic, you could actually do that. So that's my happy place. But that's kind of an easy ask because it's a nicer version of LA. But I love Barcelona.
Yeah.
I've always loved Barcelona. Incredibly talented entrepreneurs and very similar climate to here. And a lot of innovation has always come out of that region. That's somewhere that I love. I've already kind of tipped my hand. I love France. And, you know, would love to, you know, I lived in France. You may know that. I lived there for 2.5 years. I lived in the South. I lived in Antibes and I lived in Cannes. If I were to live there, yeah, go on.
You spent years in the UK as well.
I lived in Barcelona. I lived in the south of France. I lived in Rome. I lived for a long time in the UK, mostly in London, but I also lived in the north in Leeds, and I lived in Japan.
We have that Japan connection as well. I forgot about that.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And okay, so second point, and to recap for those who are joining late, you played such a pivotal role in leading the charge in getting LA to be the respected place that it is today, when it was not. That it was even back in 2007, even slightly snickered at the idea that, you know, the amount of confidence that you had, it was very infectious. But in 2007, you really had people in the Valley didn't really give any credence to the thought that you could do something, because at that time, to set the context, there was still an expectation that if you were going to take money from an investor in Silicon Valley, that you should relocate there even. And there was still a bit of brain drain happening from LA to Silicon Valley in 07, 08, 09. And it seemed like you and others, it was kind of like a stance of like, we need to solve for this, because we need to reverse the trend on that. And it seemed, I think the tide started to shift when Chris Sacca was one of the first to move down.
Yeah, maybe. I think the tide shifted irrespective of Chris Sacca. And I think Chris Sacca was more endemic of the change. Like Howard Morgan. Yeah, but Howard Morgan at First Round Capital was already coming here every year. Now Fred Wilson spends, I
Yep,
think,
half
4
the
months
year.
a year
Yeah.
here. Roger Ehrenberg comes here every year. David Lee,
Yep.
from SV Angels
Yep.
moved here permanently.
Yep.
So, I don't know really, like Chris came and he's here and he's important, but Dana Settle came here and, established Graycroft. So there was a lot of people.
Yeah. 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 I just mean timing wise, it was around that same, because David and Chris were around the same time. What else? The another issue that I wanted to bring up was you give such fantastic feedback to founders in a very tough love kind of way that is not common in Europe at all. I've come to learn, and even in America, it's a lost art form. And I feel like you gave me the best feedback I ever received in my own personal startup, and I wanted to make a big public thank you, and I want that to be on the record that I had the luxury of speaking to pretty much anybody at that time. This is about 2010 when I was starting up something small, and you were really one of the first people I sought out to get your feedback, and you really told me, in hindsight, now in 2020, looking back 10 years later, after the fact, you were 100% correct, and I resisted that entirely at the time. But you were coming from. I realize now you were coming from a place of love, like you. I don't know if you remember, but you gave me one
I
of the best
remember well.
one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard an investor ever give to any startup, which is, I've never heard anyone repeat this, by the way, and it should be written in stone somewhere. I had an idea for restaurant owners, essentially, small business
Yep.
owners, SMB owners, who, when I asked them if they want this, they said, they love it. And we had a funny moment where we went and tested it together. And the lady that we were testing loved it so much, she started crying and wanted to sign a contract on the spot. And I was like, I have to do this. She loves it so much, she's crying during the pitch. So, and you started laughing like, I can't believe this is happening. And as we're walking back to my office, you said, listen, because you were on the board of a company that was in the space, that you said, you don't necessarily want to be writing software for this demographic or this audience, or solving a problem for this particular clientele, because they are very untech savvy, essentially. They don't know where I think your point was, they don't know where the reply all key is on an email, or where the tab key is on a keyboard, or whatever, that was very well said. They did not. And you were right. It's not fun to write software for people who can't use software, essentially. And it's very, very painful. And the support calls were dreadful and never ending. And it drove me insane.
So, in essence, Tyler, what I've said to people, even back when we talked, but even today, is understand your user base. And in particular, restaurants and local merchants, generally speaking, don't have strong technical skills. And it means a couple of things. Your cost to acquire the customers high, but then in order for them to get value for what you provide, you're going to have to provide a lot of support, and relative to the price they're willing to pay, it's not a good economic equation. Now, some of that has changed, but I want to give you a real example, and maybe for everybody listening. So we funded a company called Chow Now here in Los Angeles, and they really had to push water uphill in the early years because they sell software to help restaurants automate their delivery orders or takeout. And it was only 10 to 15% of a restaurant's business. So they weren't really willing to invest in the technical solution. But what changed was COVID. So in COVID, their business went from 15% takeout and delivery to 100%.
Right.
Maybe it's down to 60%. They had no choice.
Right.
They discovered religion.
Yeah.
They discovered technology's their friend.
Yeah.
And now they realize that if they don't solve technology, what it means is Postmate, Grubhub, Uber Eats are going to take all the margin, right? So if you want to control your margin, you have to control software, you have to control technology. Now, you can't persuade somebody of that if they don't have a burning need. And I'm going to give your listeners another example, which is doctors. Like people selling to doctors for years, like doctors really didn't want to change.
Right.
And the social norm for telemedicine was really low, not just with patients, not just with regulators, but doctors themselves. That all changed in COVID because every doctor said, well, my patients aren't coming in and I'm losing revenue. And they said, I better find a way. And that way is telemedicine. So I tell this story all the time, Tyler, because it happened to me about 60 days ago. About 60 days ago, I was out running and believe it or not, I ran into a steel beam and it went straight into my leg and cut an artery.
Oh.
And I was gashing blood and I went to the urgent care. And in urgent care, they put stitches in and they said, you might have to come for surgery tomorrow. We want to see 24 hours if you have too much internal bleeding. If you have too much internal bleeding, we're going to have to do surgery tomorrow, but monitor it for a day. If it swells too much, come in. So I'm going to bed at night. My leg looks like a freaking watermelon and I can't go to sleep. It's 10 o'clock. And I'm like, I don't know. Am I going to bleed out in 2 hours? Like, am I about to die? And my wife said, like, well, why don't we see if there's telemedicine? And I'm like, come on. She goes, no, well, I think our provider has it. So she logged in, looked at the portal. I kid you not, 15 minutes later, 1-5, I'm holding this up to my leg and a doctor is saying, push on your leg. Let me see how it looks. And are your toes turning cold? And he said, go to bed. You're going to be fine. You're not going to need surgery tomorrow. And I said, how can you be so sure? And he said, if you were pushing on the skin and it wasn't pushing down, that means you have a lot of internal bleeding, but I can see how easily you push. And that's just not something you'd be able to do if you had lots of internal bleeding. You'll be fine. So what happened is in 30 minutes, we did a transaction that would have taken 2 hours. That doctor is finally a knowledge worker. Think about how much more money doctors can work. Think about the fact that doctors can actually work from the beach in the future. You're changing a social norm for doctors, but think about patients. Do you really want to go spend 90 minutes in a pediatrician's office for your kids to go get their height and weight tested and sit with all the other diseased kids and parents and everybody else? You don't want to do that. And then the doctor feels compelled to spend more time with you because they know how much time you spent. The transaction is much better. And so what COVID has done is taken 3 to 5 years of natural, normal, linear social change and brought it all forward. So what's weird is I thought we were prepared for .com 2.0. But what's actually happening is an acceleration of technology. 90% of our portfolio is up massively year over year. 10% is suffering because they're in an industry that can't be serviced right now. But I'm just astounded, and it's made me realize just how much more pervasive tech is going to be post-COVID.
I think education, I guess, would be the third.
Education, training your employees. And calls like this, like, so we might have done a remote, kind of Zoom call, podcast type thing in the past, but I do every board meeting like this now. I'm not getting on a plane going to New York City. So every board meeting, every fundraising meeting, and we're saying to ourselves, wait a second, the barrier to connect with other people is low, but we can't sit on Zoom calls for 8 hours a day and expect that to be the productivity of the future. We're going to drain all of our brain cells. So people are developing solutions to figure out how to do collaborative working better.
Okay, so a little rapid fire questions for you. Hot topics du jour, TikTok. What goes through your mind about China/TikTok? Either one or both.
I was a big believer in music as a metaphor for how people formed social networks in the past. So my kids used a product years ago that like opened my brain to this. It was called, I think, Video Star. And I saw just how much they interacted with it and shared with their friends and did everything. So I believed in that. I believed in Musical.ly, and TikTok is just the latest incarnation of that. It's incredibly well executed. So I'm happy with the movement. In fact, on Twitter, if you follow me, it's M Suster, MSUSTER. You'll see that yesterday I just shared an amazing collab of
The restaurant, the supermarket.
musical. Yes, the supermarket. Did you
Yes.
see that?
Yeah.
It's just magical.
Yeah.
And that's what comes together when creators
Yeah.
can collaborate using tools online. And so, I think future tools will allow you to do that kind of collaboration more. I know Joseph Gordon-Levitt has a startup here in LA that's helping creators come together to co-create products like this.
Yeah.
It's called Hit Record. Which is, a fantastic idea. He has a thesis that I believe a lot in, Tyler, and I know this isn't as rapid fire as it should be, but the thesis is this: we spend all of our time in social networks obsessed with the output. Did I get a like? Did I get a share? Are people engaging? Are people reading? But in reality, consumption for a creator is the least rewarding. So when I do podcasts, when I do videos like this, I never watch it after the fact because I enjoy creating. I enjoy the conversation. And creators are the same, whether you're a writer or a singer or actor or whatever. And so he built this platform. We're not an investor. I just love what they're doing. He built this platform designed to get joy out of co-creating and not worry about the end result, not worry about the like and the share and am I popular. And I think there's something to that, honestly, Tyler. But I do worry a little bit about Chinese access to general consumers and their ability to access the data and manipulate how we think. And I'll just say this to you, which is Facebook has the ability to influence political outcomes in the United States. Facebook has the ability to trigger us and make us angry or make us happy by changing the algorithm and controlling what content they put in front of us and controlling moderation tools and discussion tools. And I do think we have to be careful and be thoughtful about letting other countries do that. And if China, and I'm no hater of China, I actually love, cross-border stuff and have many Chinese friends. But if China were truly open and truly allowed Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and Google and our technology companies, then I would say by all means, we have to play by the same rules. But they block everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not that concerned about us blocking TikTok. And I know a lot of people probably think that's myopic, but that's kind of where I see the world.
I was thinking as you were talking about that that startup in Los Angeles, that one of the kind of circling back to the LA point was one of the points about LA versus the Valley was that LA was a home of creation of content even back then. Like in 2007, 8, 9, 10, it was like the Valley is about, creating these social networks, but LA was about creating the content and the songwriters and the stories and the record labels were there. And so it's not a surprise that startup sounds like a classic example.
And Tyler, one step beyond that, which is, think about this. There was always an intermediary between someone who creates a product and someone who consumes the product. So let's talk about that. It was either the retailer, like a Walmart, that was between you and the person consuming, or Amazon between you and the person who was consuming, or Google or Facebook between you and the person consuming. But in the era where you can go direct to fans and build your own audience on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Snapchat, you have the ability to get product to them, whether that's digital product, whether that's physical product. So the role of influencers is now massively on the rise, because if you're an influencer, if you're, let's say James Harden, and you want to talk direct to your fans and promote product, you have that ability now. So influencers are playing an outsized role. And what a lot of people don't realize is today's young athletes, today's young musicians, they're all digital natives. They know the technology better than many 50-year-old, venture capitalist white guys.
I think a lot of people don't realize how much of that influencer...
Oh, we lost your voice. We lost your microphone.
Oh, really? You don't
Did
hear
everybody
me.
else lose his microphone, or is it my? Yeah.
No, I think we can't hear him.
All right, Tyler, it's on your side. What does Tyler love? I see. There we go. We can hear you now.
You can
I
hear me
see
now.
I heart, but what do you heart? What does it say below
Oh,
I
I
heart?
heard HK, Hong Kong.
Gotcha.
It's
I
because
heart
of one of the
HK.
pitches is at Hong Kong. The
Gotcha.
monthly event that I do now in Stockholm, I was doing for a year every month in Hong Kong until the protests started there, and then COVID, and so I wasn't able to. And that's where I met Mahesh, Minesh, who you're going to meet in a minute.
Great.
We'll get into those pitches momentarily, but I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
So you had just asked me about, we were talking about creators. You asked me
Yeah.
about TikTok, and you were going to do rapid fire, and then I
Yeah.
completely poured gas on that and
Yeah.
did a 10-minute discussion
Okay.
of your first rapid fire.
Here's a question I've never heard anyone ask that I want to ask you. What are you most proud of?
It's an easy answer, and it's going to sound cliche. I'm most proud of my kids. I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. They've grown up in a world where they take things like a Black president for granted. They take gay pride for granted. They go to Crossroads. I'm sure you know Crossroads, very progressive school. You know, my son has two friends that both have gay parents, one two sets of moms, one two sets of dads. The two sets of moms are divorced, and one of the moms is dating a new mom. So we have to deal with the drop off of three moms and the coordination of all of that. They grow up in, a class that has, people coming from South Central Los Angeles. So they're getting to know people who are lower income African-American. My son has a very close friend who's Latino who lives kind of East LA from a lower income family. I'm so proud of their outlook in the world and how much they care about humanity, how much they care about, the future of the planet, how interested and involved they are. And I think we've got this young generation, they're 14 and 17. And of course, Trump triggers all of us, or, I would assume most of the people on this call. And they've grown up in a world pre-Trump where they know what normalcy looks like. And they aspire to be activists to get that world back for us.
Beautiful. Two more questions. What has been your biggest mistake?
I don't know, this will sound terrible, but I think probably my biggest mistake in 2007 was becoming a VC.
Really?
Yeah. Listen, I'll tell you why I did it, and I'll tell you my look back on why I think it was a mistake. I did it for a couple of reasons. One is my metaphor is basketball. I don't know if this works for international audiences, but I usually say if you have the ability to get the ball and be on the court, you want to be on the court. You don't want to be on the sidelines. You want to be on the court. And if you want to be on the court and you're good at the game, you want the ball. Time's running out. You want the ball. You want a chance to make the basket and be the hero, or miss it and be like, the outcast. And you hit a point in your career where you say, I'm not as fast as I used to be. I can't hit the shots as well, but I can see the court pretty well. And I think I'm going to use my experience to guide people who are faster and stronger and can jump higher. And I wasn't wrong about that. And the second thing is that my work-life balance was really messed up. And, I felt very unhealthy in 2007. And I didn't want to be a bad father. I wanted to be present for my boys. And so those are the reasons I switched to venture capital, being a better coach and wanting a work-life balance. And I look back 2007 to 2020. I also, in 2007, really thought we were headed for a big economic crisis. Now, I turned out to be right about that. But I thought it was going to last much longer than it did. I did not foresee this 11-year bull run that we've had. I just didn't foresee it. And when I look at my skill sets of ability to design a product, understand where markets are heading, communicate it, inspire people, access to capital. Those are the ingredients for, doing incredibly well financially. And I think I would have enjoyed it and done well. And I miss operating.
Yeah, but you can't have both. The thing you're most proud of is a result of the fact that you probably made that decision anyways.
I won't say that that I have any angst about the mistake I made. I mean, Mark Benioff offered me a lot of money to stay at Salesforce. And also, I think I would have done incredibly well financially. Like, I just was so bearish on the economy. And Mark set out a vision in 2007, early 2007, of where Salesforce would be 10 years from now.
And they did it.
And he had such a big, bold ambition. I just didn't believe it was possible. And he was so sure.
Yeah.
And I think had I trusted him more, again, financially, I mean, look, as you started out by saying, we're all super blessed, right? Like, I don't worry about money at all. But, had I stayed with Mark, I would have done incredible.
Well, looking at...
I've done just fine. I'm not complaining, but
Yeah,
only since you asked.
You look better than, I'm so happy to see you in such fantastic shape. I can see it. It's changed, not only you physically, I can see how it's gone deeper internally, and actually you're getting benefits beyond physical, which is amazing.
I appreciate it. I lost 65 pounds in 15 months.
But you have a glow. Besides that, you have a glow to you that is a beautiful thing.
It turns out it brings more energy, which in turn brings more enthusiasm and more positivity.
Yeah, but it must be diet also. Like, you must be eating quite healthy to.
That's the only way you lose weight.
Yeah. But
the mistake people make is trying to work out too much. The way to lose weight is to eat good food in small portions, and you are what you eat.
Okay. So that brings us to the last question, which will lead us right into the pitches. So the question is, what goes through your mind typically? Give us the roadmap of what's going through as you listen to a startup pitch.
I'm usually thinking, does this person know something that I generally think other people don't know? Do they have a true north? Do they have a set of beliefs about how a market is going to head, whether I agree or not? I usually wonder, have they done enough to understand everyone else who's been in that category in the past? I think entrepreneurs these days are not spending enough time understanding the history and standing on the shoulders of those who came before them. I'm thinking a lot about, like, there's two things that I can assess the most in a startup. And sometimes in pitches like this, I don't get as much of it, but in a real, like, one-on-one pitch, I would. So 2 things I judge companies by in the early days is cadence of shipping product and cadence of attracting high quality talent. And those are, for me, the 2 big tells with an early stage startup. And you can't get it always in a session like this. I'm looking for defensibility. Are you building something that, if you get it right, and it's hard to get it right, and it's hard to execute, and it's hard to be the best at what you do. But if you execute and you're right and you're the best at what you do, believe me, 5 people are going to spot what you're doing and do the same thing. And they're just going to copy you exactly. So do you have defensibility built into what you're doing? And so those are probably the ingredients.
And that it's an interesting point. You're begging the point that defensibility, as time goes on, becomes more and more of an issue because it gets easier and easier to copy faster and faster now as opposed to 10 years ago.
Exactly right.
Okay, having said that, first up, I believe, is Brick. Am I right, Emil?
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
Do you hear me loud and clear?
I hear you fine.
Hello.
Hi, Mark.
Good to connect with you.
Yeah, Emil is from Stockholm. Although this brick that he's going to show you you may have seen, it's very common in Hong Kong, as Manesh will notice in a second, but China most notably, actually, once you cross the border into Shenzhen and all throughout China, this is wildly popular in China. And the question is, will it work elsewhere, like Europe?
Let's hear about Brick.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you for that intro, Tyler.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let me see. You see a presentation here?
I do.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Emil Esselin, and I'm the CEO and founder of Brick. And we would like to say that we're putting people, not phones, in charge. So our purpose as a company is to help people get through their day. But today, like a big issue is that we're so phone dependent that a big problem is the low battery. And actually, 9 out of 10 get stressed when their phone battery drops below 20%. And our solution to this is a network of connected stations that's placed all around a city in private venues, where people using our app can locate these, simply scan a station, rent a power bank. Looks like this, comes with all the cables you need for any device. Charge on the go, and return in any station you like in the network, and just pay for the time you used it. We like to say that we're like similar to the e-scooters, but like a bit better. Because we don't have like the regulatory risks that they have, because we don't operate in the public, we operate in private venues. So we have by operating there, we have a first mover's advantage. We can simply lock distribution channel with a simple exclusivity agreement, like the ones we were talking about, like hindering others from entering the market. And we actually have like minimal to no maintenance cost, because our fleet of power banks gets recharged into stations the people return them to. And like we can solve like redistribution of power banks with simple gamification, where like our audience is helping out with redistributing it. Up until today, we have got 15,000 app downloads with 0 marketing. People like download the app and start using us when they actually need us. You can find like 270 stations in the major cities in Sweden and some in Berlin now. We just launched there. And we have charged phones for over 4 million minutes. Here are some logos you don't recognize probably, but some of them are like Åhléns is the largest department store chain in Sweden. RMF Fastigheter is the largest like doing the shopping malls in Sweden. We also have an exclusivity agreement with Starbucks in Sweden. And in a few weeks, we will launch a pilot with Subway as well, a restaurant. So, as Tyler mentioned, this is like a big thing in Asia. It has been stated as the only profitable sharing economy segment in China. And you can find these like stations at like, if you look at the bars, for instance, you have 50% of all the bars have a shared power bank station. Same thing for restaurants, airport, shopping malls. And last year, over 300 million users used this service. So it's like a very common big thing. So then the question is, how would it evolve in Europe then? So looking at London, we have 50% of all the bars have this solution. Looking in the Nordics, in Stockholm, Gothenburg, Oslo, we're like a year behind. And we're having 10% of all the venues here, or the bars. And here's the opportunity that we're heading for, which is the metropolitan areas in Germany and Poland, with less than 1% that has this service. So our goal and what we seek with this seed round that we're now raising is to become the largest phone charging network in Europe within 6 months after we raise the money. And that's by placing 5,000 stations in key Nordic and German metropolitan areas. And to do this, we need 1 million euros. And some kind of investment allocation, but the important part is that 3/4 will go to hardware production and to expansion. Okay. We have a great team with talented people serving anything from like.
Emma, we got to pause there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll send him the screenshot of the team if he wants it. So, Mark, what's going through your mind as you watch Brick here?
Let me ask you just a question, which is, what do you think the second act is? If you end up with as many distribution points as possible and you get some success with that business, where do you take it? Like, what's your next revenue stream? What's your next thing beyond that? Or do you think that's enough?
No, I think that the great opportunity lies in the network. So we are really thinking about the micro renting of these convenience items, which people, for instance, another example is like umbrella, right? You buy one, you buy an expensive one, you have one, you're thinking you're like, now, I will not suffer from rain anymore. The problem is you don't bring it when you actually need it. The same thing with power banks. Everybody has a power bank or three, but we never have them when we need them. So that's kind of the idea, is to build this ecosystem and a network. And by having this network, we could, we can replace these with anything. What the stations contain, we can replace with anything.
That's the
so mainly
question, though,
we're
is what would the next thing be?
Like, for instance, right now we're looking into doing like computer chargers, which I think is like just to level the current batteries up to facilitate
Yeah.
that. But we're also, I mean,
So
we
can I,
believe-
can I, can I ask you, I'm sorry, just a couple of rapid questions, which is how long have you been doing this for?
So we started 16 months ago with
And
developing.
how much money have you already raised?
We've raised about, with the debt equity, the bank loan, it's 3 million SEK, so $300,000.
300,000 US dollars?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have an answer. And look, I feel like my job, and I said the similar thing to Tyler, is if you said to me, I invested $5 million in this business of all my friends and all my family, and everyone gave me money, and I mortgaged my house on this, and I've bet my whole livelihood on this, I probably wouldn't say what I'm about to say. But given that you've spent relatively short period of time on this and raised relatively low volumes of money, I think the kindest thing I can do is protect your next 5 years, because I would not spend, you look like a young guy, I would not spend the next 5 years of my life building this business. I think there's some positive attributes that, if you're successful with phase one and have a good plan for phase two, that if this becomes a launching pad to some sinister, great idea that you have of how you're going to leverage the initial success, then maybe. But this business is not going to be long-term successful or valuable. And my rationale is pretty, this instance of your business, I'm not saying that you can't make it better and improve and whatever, but let's go to umbrellas. Ask yourself why there isn't an umbrella station today. Why isn't there a network model for picking up umbrellas? Why? They're relatively cheap. We don't mind buying and disposing them over time. The idea of someone then having to maintain all of the umbrellas and exchange all of the umbrellas is such that the value provided from doing that is not significant enough relative to just buying a new one. The alternate solutions for charging are coming. So you have to produce hardware, just deploy the hardware. And I'm going to talk about some of the positives in a minute. It's not just going to be negative. But everyone is investing in solutions to try and leapfrog innovation on this. I invested in a solution. It's not going to focus on phones, but I invested in wireless charging. And I invested in wireless charging that's going to do mostly for sensors and industrial use, because charging is a real problem. But the real problem is B2B, not consumer. And if you can solve B2B, it's incredibly valuable, but consumer less so. So the positive of this is retailers and shopping malls, traffic is down massively, even pre-COVID, but significantly more with COVID. If you can find solutions to drive people into retail outlets and into stores, those people will pay you to put the units in there. So that's a positive trend. And I think you can have a lot of success for the next year, year and a half. The problem is you'll be fooled by that into thinking that you should spend 5 years on this. But the way I see this breaking in years 3 to 5 is not in your favor. I don't see this being a long-term trend in the market. I think it ends up being aspirin more than medicine. And I think there's too much money that's going to go into leapfrogging this. So if you talk about Starbucks, which I think was on your slide, Starbucks is spending a lot of money on inductive charging technology. They're piloting even other types of transduction wireless charging technology. And I just think battery lives are getting better, and people's willingness to carry bricks with them exists already. So for those reasons, I would just tell you, be careful about overinvesting your time or money in today's idea. I would spend some time saying, if you think there's a real opening to get this out there quickly, figure out, if I'm there, what could I build that would be more medicine on top of it?
And that goes back to your question about what is the plan
second
B,
act.
because your interest in this would depend on, is there a really strong second act to this or not,
Yeah.
right?
Because I don't believe this is a long-term business.
Right.
This
it's just
is
it might be a
temporary
good
solve.
stepping stone, but not a long-term.
I think the fact that you brought up umbrellas is something you should spend a lot of time thinking about, which is, why isn't there an umbrella exchange network today?
I mean, there is in China, right? But the idea is, I mean, it's not like we're gonna bring up umbrellas, but I mean, it's more of the need, right? That there's things that we own today that we have. I think there's a misconception about like what's important, and I think we've taken kind of like the important here is that access beats ownership, and that's the kind of network we want to build, where you can easy access these solutions at point of need. And
Yeah,
it could be
I understand that you're passionate about it and you want to persuade me, and you might be right, and I hope you're right, and I hope it's value, and I'm not rooting against you, but I'm pretty sure you're wrong. And if you're wrong, I would just like to save you the time and money and exasperation. I'm an investor in Bird. So I will tell you about Bird. You're completely wrong about Bird and Lime and Tier and everybody and Voix and everyone else. And here's why: is they're solving a real problem. And that problem is city congestion and carbon footprint, and the need to have electronic last mile transportation is acute. The fact that people are not going to go as much on subways and on buses because they'll be worried about not just COVID-19, but the next coronavirus that comes up, and there will be more, is going to continue. So the need to solve last mile transportation might have regulatory hurdles, but actually cities are now trying to embrace e-bikes and scooters now. And there's a real acute need that you're solving. So the risk is higher, but if you get it right, the reward is like generational. If I get a charging station right, so I don't have to carry an extra brick in my purse. Yay. It's not a medicine. It's aspirin. My headache goes away, but it doesn't fundamentally change my life.
So,
anyway,
I want to say I have to jump in the middle of this, because I'm having visions of myself 10 years ago in our little chat about my own startup, Mark, and I can deeply empathize with how Emil is likely to be thinking at the moment, hearing this. On top of that, there's an additional layer, which is, Mark, everything that you're saying is classic Mark, and it's why I love you, and why I just got a text from a friend who's watching live, and he just says, dude, this guy is amazing. Thanks for bringing him out.
Okay, thank you. Whoever said that.
And it's because what you are saying is never, ever said in Scandinavia in the investor startup equation. Ever, never. And what you're doing is very, very unique. And I want Emil to know, because I'm American and I know you personally, Mark, and you did it to me, and I loved you, and it took me years to realize that what you were saying was coming out, it was being said with love. And what you're saying to Emil, you hinted at it, I think you even said it. You're saying it out of a good place in your heart, that you really want him to be very careful about where he invests his time and money, and you would hate to see him overinvest time and money in something.
And by the way, he may be right and I may be wrong. So all I'm asking you is to be like, stare yourself in the mirror many times before you commit 5 years of your life, to be sure that you're sure. And if you're sure that you're sure, go for it. Like I'm wrong a lot. Should we do the next one?
Yes. Thank you. Emil,
Thank you.
that was good, man. You did good, and you and I can talk.
Oh, by the way, I do have to say this because I wrote it before I got to the business, and this is important for people. Energy was amazing, and that matters a lot in a pitch meeting. Your narrative was really good. You had a story of why this needed to exist, and it was really easy to follow the story and to understand what you do. So I think from an idea that I think is a good idea, but not a truly exceptional idea, but your ability to convey your idea, I think was really strong. So the skill sets are there.
Yeah, good point. Manesh, are you there?
I'm there.
Can
I'm
you share
sharing my deck.
Can you share your screen?
I am sharing my screen. Can you not see it?
I see it.
I can see it.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Mark. It's amazing because I've read your blog multiple times, so
Thank
I've been
you.
a fan. Thank
I
you.
appreciate
And
it.
I'm from SoCal. I'm from Temecula, so I
Oh,
know
my
that.
mom lives in Temecula.
I have
I
a
spent
place in
a lot of
Temecula.
time there.
Yeah, I have
Good.
to preface this one by saying I met Manesh in Hong Kong. The event that I was doing in Hong
Startup
Kong,
Launchpad.
I
Launchpad, Tyler.
quickly learned that Hong Kong, as you realize, is next door to Shenzhen, which is the Silicon Valley of hardware, right? Easily the global capital of hardware production. And Manesh is easily one of the most important figures in, and he hosts one of the very biggest, best events in this hardware creation sourcing arena. He's a household name
Awesome.
amongst anyone doing hardware.
Well, that's great. And I fund many hardware companies. So why don't you tell me, Manesh, what BuyHive does?
Yes, but I open with saying I'm not a hardware company. I am helping hardware companies.
No. I got that. It says sourcing as a service. I definitely got that. I'm pointing it out to tell you that I understand a little bit about how the
Great.
source process works.
Perfect. So I'll move really quickly. We have 4 minutes. I'm going to touch on only the main important parts.
Yep.
So as you understand, what majorly has happened during the COVID is the disruption of supply chains and sourcing. And this will continue. The other factor that has changed is the retail industry has moved from brick and mortar to pretty much platform-based model. So the Walmart e-commerce, Amazon e-commerce, eBay plus Shopify and WooCommerce, and these are the futures. And that's the market that we are serving. We have 3 solutions that we provide for the market. We have the freelancer assisted sourcing service. So this is like an Upwork or a Fiverr of sourcing. So freelancers with 10 plus years of experience who have done sourcing all their lives, maybe hardware sourcing in some cases, will be providing the sourcing service for you. We charge a per day fee, depending on where the freelancers are located. From this model, we generate a lot of good supplier information. These suppliers then are selected to sell on online platform. On the online platform, we take the liability and we help the buyers buy the product, but along with the product, they can buy testing, inspection services, logistics services, insurance services, all of them through one checkout experience. And then finally, for those that have larger needs and that have specific customization needs, we have the D2D service, which is basically discovery of the supplier to the delivery of the product. So anything in between, from product sample making to QA, QC, everything is included in the turnkey solutions market. Now, what we have done so far in this year is we tested out the MVP. The MVP was started with the turnkey solutions market, and the key was for us to prove that it works, and we wanted to bring in revenue for this. We left our corporate jobs to get into this. So for us, it was very worthwhile that if we don't bring revenues in this year, we are going to go. So we pivoted, we changed around, but we brought in revenues, we brought in paying customers. What we brought in were, and this all has been pretty much under $1,000 worth of marketing spend, everything we have done. We've generated about 600 plus freelancers fairly quickly, all with 10 plus years experience. We signed up some really big customers. We did revenues of 8.5 million plus dollars, and we have net profits of about 1.25 that we are investing in. Everything we've done is with our own cash, and whatever revenues that are there, that's what we fed into the company. We have not taken any money from anybody else, and I don't think we need to take money. The only reason we would like to take the money is to expand and grow much faster, and you will see who we are competing with. And I'm really proud of the team that we have built, which is why we are able to do this. So my background, I've worked in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, India, New York, London, and back now in Hong Kong. And I've worked on production side, I've worked on trading side, I've worked in compliance business, as well as the last job where I met Tyler. I was managing large trade shows and conferences, off-sourcing industry, and helping hardware players.
So Manesh, I see the background of your team members. Just because we have limited time, let's move on, because I want to understand better like what your product and what you're doing.
So the product I showed you, there is 3 products that are there. Basically, what we are solving is the retail industry main problems, and what is available to them today are the likes of Alibaba, made in China, global sources, etc. And the biggest problem with them is they are conflicted with the advertising model. They are a listing model where advertisers are ranking first, and on the first page, that's what you will see. And
So Manesh, I'm sorry to jump in, but like what I want to figure out is, you said you're Upwork for sourcing, right? So like I have a model in my head, which is you're a marketplace. And what I'm curious about is the value of what you do match me with experts? I know that you're doing that. And those experts can be experts in testing, logistics, sourcing, shipping, sample QA. I mean, I heard all the services. Does your software help at all with the process management of any of those things? Not that it should, but just so I understand. Or is it more focused on people matching and then the expert manages their own process?
Yeah. So there are 3 models. That's why. So we have one model, which is just experts match, and they do the work and they provide it through the platform. We collect the data.
Model 2 is what?
And it goes to them. The second model is the e-commerce model, which is simple. They do the transactions. It is bulk transactions. You're able to buy 10,000 battery packs, as he was selling. As the earlier presentation was there. If he wants battery packs, we'll supply them, and we will take liability of those. The third model is where you want to customize something, you want to design something, you want to build something. We help you do that as well. So there are 3 teams that do 3 business models.
And how much software do you have to manage the design and build process?
Actually, right now we built it all in-house with our own money. So we have put together a pretty decent platform for it. It's a platform. It's not a software. It's all on a platform.
I don't understand the difference between platform and software.
In the sense that it's not a software as a solution kind of model where we can give the solution.
You're not charging SaaS, but you have software that helps me manage a process. Yeah, that's all I meant. I'm not saying what your business model is. Okay, good. Anything else you didn't tell me that you want to tell me?
The main thing is this is the direction that we are looking at. So this year we will end up at about $11 million in our first year. So we started 1st January 2020, pivoted. We've done about 8.5.
And the 11 is GMV, right?
GMV, but basically all the money is collected by us and then paid to the suppliers. It's not brokering.
What is your take rate?
Between 15 to 20%.
Okay.
Right. And basically next year is our investment year, and then we see the growth path because we have 3 models that we are investing in.
How many suppliers or people do you have on your platform today?
So we have about 600 plus freelancers on the platform, and we have about 300 plus suppliers that we have uploaded, but we have about 5,000 in our database that we are vetting now.
Are they all in Shenzhen today, or do you have them in other regions?
No, everywhere. We have in China, all different locations in China. We have in Malaysia. We have in Vietnam.
I got it. So sorry to jump in. If we had more time, I would let you talk more. So I just want to get into a discussion. So let's talk about the business. I'll give you 1 or 2 tips on the pitch, but on the business, there is a real problem.
Yes.
And the problem is that startup companies in particular, but really any company, but let's say startups, companies that have been in business for 0 to 8 years, have a need to source products, and supply chains are shifting overnight. So people who used to source from China are now worried about the China risk, and the China risk is real. So the ability for you to change out your supply chain. I mean, I know that Amazon is massively changing supply chain. They're moving into places like Vietnam. They're moving into Malaysia. People are spending more time looking at what can we source from Mexico, what can we source from India, because they understand that geopolitics, as I talked about before, is changing the nature of supply chains. And it's very complicated if you don't have a large team and the skill sets to figure out where can I source the best product, where can I source experts who understand. If I'm doing, for example, cameras, and I want to have very specific expertise in how to design a camera and manufacture a camera at scale, knowing even how to find those people is very hard to do. So I have companies that have done that and have migrated from China to a combination of Taiwan and Malaysia. The problem with Malaysia, and it drives me fucking crazy, but they won't allow integration with Israel. They won't allow Israeli citizens to travel there. So the geopolitics extends to myopic countries that don't understand global innovation. Thank God we have places like the UAE that are normalizing relationships with Israel. But so we had to select a vendor that could not only meet our needs, but could leverage Malaysia while manufacturing also in Taiwan so that our team from Israel can actually travel to the fucking place, right? So excuse my language. So it's a real problem. And I see everybody doing it now. Many of the companies I work with have some in-house skills, but if there were software that allowed them to find experts in different markets, rapidly get information off the ground, help them with things like design, testing, understanding, some process management, which is why I asked about it. I think it's an incredibly valuable category, and I'd love to spend more time talking to you about it.
Yeah, and I can do a demo for you of all the software too when we talk next time.
Awesome. I will just say on the pitch deck, you're very good at talking about solution, and you just, in some ways, are a little bit lucky that I spent a lot of time on this problem. So I didn't need to understand the problem. I lived this problem. I would probably, if I'm doing a pitch, spend a little bit more time setting up the problem, like talking about not just the two things you identified, which is disruption of supply chain, physical moving to digital, but actually go through the job of what someone there has to do and how they respond to changes in the market rapidly and why a solution would solve that problem. But I happen to know it, so I shorthanded there. Sorry, Tyler.
I have to take the blame on that because I specifically told these pitchers not to spend much time on the problem and just focus on the solution.
That's fair. That's fair. I do think a setup is helpful.
Yeah.
Even if you do it quickly.
Just by default, startups way over by default emphasize.
I know, spend too much time on
problem and
but Mark, I get you, and I completely agree.
Tyler will send you my email address and just reach out directly.
Yes.
All right.
All right, good. What's up next?
Matan and Tal from Tel Aviv.
Hey.
Hello.
So actually, I'm technically in Greece right now. And I wanted to tell you about Israel. You were saying 6 million people. Israel is nearing 9 million people at this point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I guess I have to keep track of these things, like population growth is enormous and I can never keep track. 9 million.
So, hi, my name is Matan, and my co-founder Tal and I are behind Tongo, which is the world's first tongue computer interface, which is basically a device that fits in your mouth and enables you to wirelessly control other devices using your tongue instead of your hands.
Wow.
So technology is becoming smaller and smarter by the day, and yet all of our devices rely on two things, your left hand and your right hand. For more than 30 million people who cannot control their hands, and for the use cases where both hands are already busy, there is a major pain point.
I get it. Next slide.
Totally. So let's talk about the tongue. So the tongue is a really interesting organ. It has really natural and precise orientation within the mouth. It can perform for a really long time without getting exhausted or tired. And it maintains full functionality even if you have really severe neurological disorders or spinal cord injuries. And to just like really feel the product for a second, take your tongue, touch one of your teeth, and then touch another one, and then slide between them. And you can really feel like you have a keyboard in your mouth that you can really intuitively control.
Got it.
What we have created are patent-pending smart braces, a set of sensors that fits inside your mouth and connected by Bluetooth to control a number of devices, such as smartphones, computer, gaming console, smart homes, and more, using nothing but your tongue. Our fully functional beta device is intuitive to use and easy to learn, and already includes 5 different Android applications, including games and playing music.
So you can see this live demo I did at Google, where I'm already controlling a wheelchair using my tongue. And we've graduated accelerators from IBM, Microsoft. We've got funded by the Israel Innovation Authority. We are supported by 2 major hospitals, won some awards, and now we're seeking funding to actually bring this to the end users who need it.
Tongo technology has huge potential for many other use cases. We plan to start with an assistive device where users need it the most, and then to scale up to other industries using our unique IP. First, bringing tongue-based controllers into gaming industry, where we're already collaborating with Microsoft.
So the business model basically recognizes the potential to make a pretty sustainable profit based on only 3% of the addressable market, which we hope to do within 7 years. We can go into this if you want later with more numbers.
Our team includes Matan, is a test speaker and Forbes under 30, and I'm a biomedical engineer and hold master in industrial design. And we've been lucky to surround ourselves with brilliant developers and designers who are passionate about bringing innovation for a better tomorrow. We also graduated from the top, this is the Israeli accelerators.
Yep, that's really the short version of this.
Awesome.
There's more.
So I think I mentioned earlier in the call that I did a podcast yesterday with Jason Kalkanis. It'll be released on Friday. And it'll make you happy because in the podcast, I talked about my major investment belief is in an area called HCI, which I'm guessing translates in Israel. It's human computer interfaces. Yeah. And what I was talking about is how we're stuck in this metaphor. You say left hand, right hand. I kind of held up my mouse and my keyboard. And I said, this is the most artificial way for us to interact with technology. And I have been funding companies for the last 7 or 8 years that want to change this. I've looked at some wearables and haptics and stuff like that. I haven't convinced myself of anyone who had an application that could break out or a production cost that could go at scale. But so where I've mostly been focused on is laser, radar, infrared, microphones, sensors, cameras, computer vision. And mostly it's been I, not O. So mostly it's been how all of those HCIs ingest information better than humans can. I funded a company, a team of entrepreneurs from India who moved to the US, who designed a platform that basically you put a mirror over the camera of your iPad and it projects down on a playing surface. And then they designed educational products for children to then use their hands, but interact digitally. And then they were designing output devices that could be like a projector. They had a lamp that could, read the table. So think of what Microsoft was doing, trying to do like true desktop-based computing. And they were innovating. And then sadly, they were purchased by, well, maybe not sadly, but by Byju's, which is one of the fastest growing companies in India in the education space. So now I'm a shareholder in Byju's. But I really believed that we were pushing the boundaries of how humans are going to interact in a more tactile way. So the fact that you're doing something like that is really exciting to me. I haven't spent anytime thinking about how the tongue could be used, the initial idea of it is very weird. But weird doesn't mean bad. And so where I'd love to spend more time with you is talking about like what comes beyond disabilities. And by the way, disability, very large market. I think you could go a long way to being successful serving that market. We have a whole practice investing in gaming.
Right.
And so spending some time understanding if that's real, like, is that really going to happen, and getting our spot in. We do a lot of cross-border with Israel now. I funded a team out of Technion already. Love the innovation that comes out of there. You may know it. It's called Nanit. They do baby monitors. And so what we can do with the baby monitor is we can tell respiration rate of a child. We can tell whether you're breathing. We can tell height, weight. We can do circumference of your head. We can tell you how much they're waking up, why they're waking up. Is it heat or light or sound or parental involvement? And there's so much we can predict using computer vision. And that's an example of HCI for me, which is like there's no keyboard and mouse that an infant can do to tell you that they're not feeling well. So I love it. I love, I don't understand exactly how the product works, but I would love to spend time with you trying to understand that.
Yeah. Do you want us to get into this right now?
I think in respect to Tyler and the time that he has, I would love to do it offline, but again, Tyler will connect us. But it's definitely an area that I would love to be smarter about. And, if I can be helpful in return, great.
Amazing.
Cool. Very nice. So that is the 3 pitches for tonight. I have watching you do these, Mark, every time you give feedback to somebody, it made me think of 1 or 2 more that I have been neglecting to send you anything over the years, but I think there's quite a few that I think you would really like. But thank you for this feedback session, because I was getting the comment section was going nonstop on my phone personally, and then even in the YouTube chat. People love
the thing I want to thank you. The thing I want to say to the gentleman from Brick is I respect what you're doing and I understand the excitement around it. When you hear about a company designing a new way to use your tongue to control outcomes in the world, what you're hearing, and why I get excited about that relative to Brick, is a company that's going to be much higher risk and therefore have a higher failure rate than what you're doing. But if it succeeds, could fundamentally change the way something works and change outcomes. And those type of companies, they're higher risk, but they're solving more a medicine problem. And medicine is a metaphor, not as an actual thing, because somebody who today can't use their fingers. I don't know if you guys saw on social media, this Brazilian guy who was a concert pianist. You should Google it. He's a concert pianist and he had injury to his hands and hasn't been able to play in 20 years. And they designed robotics for his hands. And this week he was able to play the piano for the first time in 20 years. I mean, it'll move you to tears to watch it.
I was moved to tears earlier today watching the video that they didn't even show you. You have that handy? You want to play that?
I don't know. Oh yeah, go on. Oh, this is of the tongue thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's do it. I'm in.
Yeah, play the video, and then we'll close on that.
All right, I'm gonna upload it 1 second.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you didn't even play it, and it's one of the best startup videos I've seen in a long time. Because normally startups are so excited to show their videos, and they're not that great generally.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen again and play from the top. A second.
We have great models.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't do it from YouTube because the internet in Greece is pretty not. Whatever. All right, sharing my screen.
Or you can send a link to Tyler, who I'm sure can then just push play on the video if you don't have good.
I think you've got it. Oh, you're going to do it from your browser. There it is. There you go.
43 years old. I'm working as a QA leader in the high tech in this building. I'm so old, 40 years old. and I'm an industrial designer. Do have only one hand that I can control. All of the rest not functional. When I go with my child on the street, I'm going with afraid that they will run to the road. But if I could move my wings using my tongue, I can hold them and make them safe. The tongue is the only muscle in the body that's connected only in one side. If you train it, you can master it. I can use it with my computer mouse or Photoshop, SolidWorks. You need very high resolution to call every specific aspect from the program. I used to trying eye tracking, but not yet because I have a lot of shaking in my head also. Time have the higher resolution above every other ability in Japan. It's a very good solution for gaming, video cameras, smartphone. If it's connected to Wi-Fi, to Bluetooth, to anything, any device, the skies are not the limit. I never thought I could move the wheelchair without my hand. It's amazing, amazing.
Yeah, so that obviously amazing, and I have some experience in kind of watching medical solutions control with the mouth. So that's why instantly I see the value in that. And I don't know how big is that market, how crowded is it, who else are doing things for it. That in itself is exciting, but I do want to spend time on what comes after that, not because I don't believe that's a valuable market, but because you mentioned that you think there's a world beyond that. So I would love to start imagining that, and have some time where we can deep dive on that.
Let's do it.
You guys would be crazy not to take him up on it. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you to Emil from Brick, Manesh from Byhive, Matan Tal. And thank you so much, Mark, for the time. It was long overdue, and it's such a pleasure to see your very healthy, happy face.
Thank you, Tyler. And listen, in this world where I'm not traveling too much and where time zones aren't a constraint because we're all connected to Zoom, if I can do it again, just let me know.
Okay.
All right.
All right,
Take care.
guys.
Good to see you all. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, so while they do that, I'm going to jump right back into my deck for 2 seconds. We did the 3 startups. One quick announcement. Sting Day is coming up at stingday.com, live from Stockholm, Munich, London, New York, all simultaneously on October 22nd. It's just stingday.com. You can go register there. Do that now. And again, thank you to our partners, EY, Visa, Esri, Capole, EQT, NASDAQ, Swedish Energy Agency, Vinga, and Nordea for making it all happen. And thank you, everybody. We will see you next time. Cheers.